You wake up, check your phone, scroll for 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes turn into 40. Suddenly you're late, again. You promise yourself you'll get serious tomorrow, again. You tell yourself you're busy, overwhelmed, doing your best. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. You're not busy, you're not overwhelmed, you're not unlucky. You're just terrible at time. And I don't mean productivity hacks. I don't mean calendars. I don't mean waking up at 5 a.m. like a LinkedIn prophet. I mean, you don't understand what time actually is. Because if you did, you wouldn't be exhausted all the time. You wouldn't feel like your life is slipping through your fingers. And you definitely wouldn't be telling yourself, where did the years go? This video isn't here to motivate you. It's here to expose you. Because the problem isn't that time is moving too fast. The problem is that you're not really living inside it at all. Before we go any further, let's get something clear. This video falls under fair use as defined by Section 107 of the Copyright Act. This content is for educational, critical, and transformative purposes only. If anything here resonates with you, buy the book. Seriously, you'll need it. Now, the book we're talking about today is Time and the Art of Living by Robert Grudin. And no, this is not a self-help book in the modern sense. There are no checklists, no 10 rules, no hustle porn. Robert Grudin was a philosopher, literary scholar, and cultural critic. He taught at places like MIT and Harvard. And unlike most modern thinkers, he didn't try to simplify life into slogans. He did something much more dangerous. He questioned how you experience time itself. Grudin wrote this book in the early 1980s, before smartphones, before social media, before infinite scroll, and yet somehow it describes your life better than anything written today. This book argues something deeply unsettling. You don't lack discipline, you don't lack motivation, you don't lack intelligence, you lack a relationship with time, and because of that, you're fragmented, pulled apart, living in pieces. Grudin's central idea is simple but brutal. Freedom is not something you possess in space. Freedom is something you build across time, and most people never do. They live trapped in the present, terrified of the future, and disconnected from their past. They don't live their lives. They consume moments and call it existence. This book is about breaking that spell. Not by escaping time, but by learning how to inhabit it. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Grudin doesn't let you blame society. He doesn't let you blame technology. He doesn't let you blame capitalism, trauma, or bad luck. He points the finger exactly where it belongs, at how you choose to move through time. And if that pisses you off, good, because that means it's working. Welcome to Mindful Reads Hub. Let's get started. Awakening to time. You wake up in a world obsessed with clocks, but blind to time. We measure life in minutes, deadlines, hours logged, and notifications dismissed. We brag about being busy like it's a badge of honor, as though survival in a packed schedule equals meaning. But if you press pause for just a second, there's a terrifying truth underneath. Most people are not living in time, they are enslaved by it. Robert Grudin's book doesn't gently introduce time as a neutral backdrop for birthdays and meetings. He shatters the illusion that time is a measurement we command. Instead, time is the invisible grid shaping every fear, thought, and decision you have. It's like air. You only notice it when it's gone wrong. And in modern life, it is very wrong. We tell ourselves we're free. We say things like, I have no time, I'm so busy, or where did all the years go? We blame phones, bosses, traffic, technology, anything except the actual experience of time inside us. But Grudin shows that these are symptoms of a deeper psychological condition. We confuse time with schedule and clock, and we abandon the real psychological quality of time, the lived experience of it. We treat time like something out there to be managed instead of something within us to be inhabited. That's where psychology enters the conversation. Phil Zimbardo's time perspective theory reveals that what people call time is actually a set of mental filters, How we relate to the past, present, and future influences our choices, emotions, and behavior. Some people obsess over what's next, others get stuck replaying old regrets, and others chase the next dopamine hit because they can't bear the future or the past. This is not random. That fragmentation, past, present, future, is exactly what Grudin describes as the prison of modern consciousness. You don't live in a smooth stream of time. You live in shards of memory, anticipation, and urgency. When those shards are out of balance, you become a human pinball, bouncing between anxiety about tomorrow and regret about yesterday. And yes, this isn't just philosophy anymore. It's happening everywhere on Earth, backed by robust scientific research. A 2025 virtual reality study showed that emotional states and stress literally distort how we perceive time. Calming environments make it stretch, stress makes it collapse, and this is measurable in the brain. That means your perception of time is not abstract or poetic, it's neurobiological. So why do so many people feel like time is accelerating, like life is slipping through their fingers faster each year? A collective rumble on the internet reflects exactly this sensation. Reddit users around the world report that years now feel like months and days vanish without notice. Some describe 2025 as flying by faster than previous years, regardless of age. This isn't mystical. It's the specious present, a psychological phenomenon showing that what we call now isn't an instant, but a small duration filled with memory and anticipation. But there's a twist. Time feels faster, not because clocks have changed. Humans encode fewer memorable experiences as life becomes routinized. Psychology research on subjective time shows that when days blur together, it's because nothing truly new or engaging is happening. So when you look back, time feels compressed. This is why in many parts of the world, sudden movements have emerged toward reclaiming time rather than schedules. A 2026 survey shows Gen Z and millennials actively reducing screen time to improve well-being, deliberately reconnecting with analog habits like reading physical books or playing board games to rediscover a richer sense of lived time, not just clock time. They are reacting, perhaps unconsciously, to the psychic fragmentation Grudin describes. Meanwhile, workplace culture is eating life itself. Employees in many countries report infinite workdays. Remote work has blurred personal and professional time into one long, stressful continuum. Surveys reveal productivity anxiety afflicting 80% of workers, particularly younger ones, where meeting deadlines becomes the measure of self-worth and emotional wellness collapses into performance metrics. In South Korea, where work hours are notoriously long, younger workers are rejecting endless overtime not because they lack grit, but because they realize time outside work matters more than the illusion of ever greater productivity. When people fail to take vacation time they've earned, it's not because they love work more. It's because they've internalized the value system of a culture that equates urgency with importance, presence with productivity, and worth with busyness. Time poverty, a phenomenon where individuals feel chronically behind, even with a packed schedule, isn't a moral failing. It's the result of external expectations and internalized panic about not doing enough, being enough, living enough. And here's the central confrontation. This world of hustle, of meaningless busyness, makes time a prison instead of a medium for growth. Yet, Grudin's deeper insight isn't that time enslaves you. It's that modern life convinces you that no alternative exists. You've been taught to treat time like a resistor you must overcome, rather than a reality to engage with consciously. The paradox is that people who spend most of their lives in the present moment, online scrolling, instant gratification cycles, endless notifications, often experience more anxiety and less meaning precisely because they aren't truly present. True presence isn't just being in the moment physically, It's being psychologically coherent with your past and future selves. Real-time awareness requires context, memory, and anticipation. This is why storytelling, ritual, music, art and culture have survived for millennia. They help organize experience into phases, arcs, narratives. They embed individual moments into something larger, giving texture and depth to time rather than letting it collapse into repetitive monotony. Key idea: time is not a series of independent moments you can manage like tasks. It is a psychological structure that shapes how you think, feel, and choose your life path, with distortion and fragmentation producing anxiety, burnout, and a sense of life slipping away. Key takeaway: if you don't understand how your mind frames time, how you relate to past memories, present experience, and future anticipation, you aren't living your life intentionally. You're reacting to time's psychological forces and letting them define your everyday. Favorite quote: time doesn't just pass you by, it passes through you. The quality of your life is measured not by how fast your clock ticks, but by how deeply your lived moments are woven into the fabric of your being. The illusion of now. You think you live in the moment, but what your brain actually experiences is a lie it tells itself about time. You wake up, check your phone, scroll through notifications, laugh at a meme, and suddenly 3 hours have evaporated. You don't feel like you lost time. You feel like time cheated you. But here's the brutal, non-negotiable truth from psychology. What you call the present is not a thin slice of time at all. It's a construct your brain fabricates by stitching together threads of memory and future anticipation. The science even has a name for this: the specious present, a chunk of time that feels like now but already contains traces of before and hints of what's next, all blended together into one synthetic experience. Grudin doesn't go all physics on you. He doesn't want to debate relativity or space-time diagrams. He wants to yank you out of the comforting illusion that your life is happening in discrete ticks. He argues that modern consciousness, shaped by education, technology, ambition, anxiety, culture, and habit, fractures time into pieces that pull you apart. One piece obsessed with the past, one griping about the future, and a desperately shallow present that feels empty, unreal, or like a waiting room between bigger moments. This isn't a poetic claim. It lines up with modern science showing how the mind processes time. People literally perceive future events as closer than past events because the brain feels like it's moving toward the future. This isn't just a quirk, it's a survival mechanism our brains evolved to help us anticipate. But in the frantic modern world, where your notification sound distracts you more often than your instincts warn you of danger, this mechanism warps your subjective experience of time until it feels unpredictable, elusive, and impossible to control. And that's exactly why so many people have a lopsided sense of self. Adolescents and young adults think about the future more than older people, while older adults spend more time in the present just trying to make sense of everything that happened. Somewhere in the middle, most adults lose sight of how the past, present, and future actually relate, and that confusion correlates with lower self-esteem and increased anxiety. Think about that for a second in real terms. Teenagers are constantly planning, forecasting, projecting. The future feels huge and immediate. Middle-aged adults often feel like the past is dragging them down. Memories, regrets, missed chances. And older adults sometimes report that the present feels fuller simply because they've built enough stable meaning over time. Google time perception and aging, and the anecdotal flood is striking. People above 50 often insist that time speeds up, and scientists aren't dismissing it. Research shows that as we age, our internal clocks may shift how they process duration, creating a sensation that life accelerates. But let's go beyond science and psychology into reality. Entire media narratives are built around this distortion. Documentaries and podcasts, from Diary of a CEO to On Purpose, dive into how entrepreneurs, creatives, and thinkers struggle with time. One recurring theme is that people chasing the moment without anchoring themselves to memory or goals feel more anxiety, not less. They talk about burnout, about feeling the years slip past like water through a sieve, about waking up at 35 regretting choices they didn't consciously make. That's not dramatization, that's temporal disorientation. In culture too, there's a term that captures this: the end of history illusion, the idea that you've changed a lot up to now but will barely change in the future. People think they know who they are and then assume that's the final version, underestimating how much they will evolve. This breaks your sense of continuity, making the future a phantom that never quite feels real enough to motivate deep, sustained effort. And that matters because time isn't just about seconds and dates, it's about identity. When your present is fractured between the ghost of all you regret and the fantasy of all you hope to be, you never are anywhere. You don't live, you drift. Social media hijacks this effect. Algorithms exploit the brain's reward system to keep you scanning the stream of now, while your deeper self waits, stagnating in nostalgia or anxiety. Research shows that people consistently underestimate time spent on social media by huge margins because the dopamine loops fragment attention and make hours disappear without awareness. In some communities around the world, from digital minimalists in Scandinavia unplugging to reclaim their days, to mindfulness movements in Southeast Asia teaching conscious awareness, people call this getting out of autopilot. In those practices, you're not just present, you're attentive, observing how experience unfolds without letting the past and future yell over you. Modern neuroscience suggests that bodily awareness and internal signals, like your heartbeat, are actually critical to accurate time estimation. When we lose touch with our body, we lose touch with the pace of our lives. And there's the irony. You don't need less time, you need a different experience of it. Key idea: what we think of as the present is a psychological illusion, a blend of memory, anticipation, and attention, and our modern culture exploits this fracture to keep us disconnected from the continuum of our lives. Key takeaway: if you want to live your life instead of letting it slip through your fingers, you must stop treating time as a sequence of moments to escape or fill, and start understanding how your mind shapes the experience of past, present, and future. Favorite quote: "The present isn't a point in time. It's a bridge between memories and hopes that your mind constantly rebuilds." Becoming someone over time. You've been told that identity is something pristine and fixed, like a sculpture in a museum, unchanging, complete, done. But that's a comforting lie. The real truth, the brutally honest one most people run from, is that identity is not static. It's a process, and it refuses to sit still while you sleepwalk through life. Robert Grudin makes this painfully clear. Identity isn't something that magically appears when you turn 18 or invent a catchy bio for social media. It's something that emerges from the continuous way you experience time, relationships, commitments, love, aging, and change. You don't find your identity like a sock under the bed. You grow it against resistance, through repetition, sacrifice, endurance, and honest confrontation with your own choices. That's the core of what Grudin is doing when he fuses identity, love, growth, and age in one narrative rhythm. Modern psychology screams the same truth. Identity isn't found once and forever. It's an ongoing construction across life. Narrative identity theory even says that you are essentially the author of your own life story. Your memories, your interpretations of the past, and your imagined future all weave together into a dynamic, evolving self. It's not a noun, it's a verb. You are doing identity, not having identity. Look around you. A teenager in Tokyo is told to build a career identity before choosing a university. A middle-aged professional in Nairobi feels their self-worth tied to job titles and LinkedIn endorsements. A retiree in Buenos Aires struggles with age because their culture equates identity with productivity. In every case, what's happening isn't surface level, it's temporal. It's an identity struggle across time. This echoes psychosocial research showing how identity clarity, having a cohesive sense of who you are over time, predicts psychological well-being, whereas fragmentation or a lack of integrated identity correlates with anxiety and malaise. And love isn't just butterflies and warm feelings. Neuroscientist Bianca Acevedo's brain imaging research found that the brains of people in intense romantic love after decades together show activity similar to people in early stage love. That means long-term bonds can be powerful identity stabilizers. They help scaffold who you are by anchoring your story over years, not just fleeting infatuations, but aging flips the script again. Socio-emotional selectivity theory, developed by psychologists like Laura Carstensen, shows that as people get older and feel their future time diminishing, they shift priorities toward emotionally meaningful relationships and goals. They become more choosy, not necessarily picky, but strategically selective about what matters, minimizing negativity and maximizing emotional richness. That's identity evolving in real time, not a fixed label, but a refinement. News from aging populations around the world validates this psychological shift. A recent study in BMC Geriatrics found that older adults who positively identify with aging, not fighting it, not denying it, are far more socially engaged and active than those who cling to a youth identity that's already slipped away. Acceptance, not denial, becomes a source of strength. You might think love, identity, and purpose are separate arenas, but they are entangled with time. Psychological longitudinal studies reveal that identity isn't an endpoint at age 20 or 30. It fluctuates and stabilizes across decades. Commitment deepens, priorities shift, self-concept becomes richer or more fragile depending on life events, divorce, career change, parenthood, loss. Identity has layers shaped by choices and experiences that echo forward in time. This is why social media commentary about finding yourself is so shallow. People on Reddit argue about whether identity is achieved in adolescence, young adulthood, or ever at all. And the wisdom emerging is none of the above. Identity isn't achieved, it's unfolded, it evolves. What you were at 16 influences you. What you hope to become shapes you, and the you of yesterday still resides within the you of today if you have the courage to look. Even physical aging changes perception and identity. Time perception itself shifts across life. Research shows the subjective experience of time accelerates as we age, not because clocks run faster, but because our brains encode fewer novel experiences as we settle into routine. This distortion influences self-narrative and how identity is temporalized. The scariest part? Most people avoid this. They carve their identities into sound bites, job titles, Instagram posts, and fleeting goals instead of building a lasting self that spans years, challenges, and growth. They think identity is something to arrive at, not something to engage with continuously. A mature identity, the kind Grudin points toward, isn't born from comfort or stability. It comes from living through contradictions, from loving and losing, from relationships that expand you, from responsibilities that demand you act even when you're afraid. It flourishes when you stop treating your past as an anchor and start using it as context. Key idea: identity isn't a fixed destination. It's a temporal achievement, a dynamic, evolving self constructed through memory, anticipation, relationships, and life's passage over time. Key takeaway: To grow beyond superficial self-images and constantly shifting personas, you must embrace identity as an ongoing process that integrates the past with the future, not just chases a fleeting present. Favorite quote: "Identity is not who you think you are. It's the story you author across time, through the choices you make and the meaning you weave from every chapter of your life." Power, morality, and the long game. You wake up in a society trained to disrespect time at its roots, to treat urgency like intelligence and short-term reaction like moral wisdom, yet wonder why politics, ethics, and justice seem shallow, unstable, and constantly crisis-driven. You scroll news feeds daily, watching leaders postpone climate action, buckle under quarterly targets, and echo slogans instead of long-term vision. But the problem isn't random chaos. It's a systemic moral failure born of short-term time thinking. This is the deep insight Robert Grudin cuts toward when he throws morality and politics into conversation with time, that ethical life and responsible politics only make sense when viewed as longitudinal pursuits, sustained, integrated, and stretched across decades, generations, and lifetimes. Grudin's original fusion of the politics of time and morality in time doesn't just point out human weakness, it diagnoses a cultural sickness. Modern life trains us to care about impact now: elections, stock prices, clicks, quarterly earnings, while ignoring the invisible cost building up in the future. You may think you're pragmatic, but if your moral worldview ends at the next fiscal quarter or the next headline cycle, you are temporarily blind to consequences that matter most. This isn't an abstract accusation, it's a psychological and ethical pattern that shows up in big ways across the world. Research in moral psychology reflects exactly this. Most people show a present-oriented bias in moral judgment, caring far more about those near in time than those who will exist decades or centuries later. Even when asked to consider future generations, the subjective moral standing of those future people drops rapidly as temporal distance increases. But when individuals are prompted to think about long-term consequences or possess vivid imagination and long-termist beliefs, they expand their moral concern far beyond the immediate moment. That means moral indifference to the future isn't fixed. It can be cultivated or suppressed. In real life, this plays out in headlines every day. Dutch politics, for instance, is literally being reshaped by short-termism. Students interviewed former politicians and found that electoral pressure, social media, and voter volatility push leaders to prioritize quick wins at the expense of systemic, future-focused policies like real climate strategies. Issues like nitrogen emissions, agricultural sustainability, and structural environmental reform get pushed down the agenda because the next election always looms larger than the next generation. The same pattern is visible globally. Carbon emissions targets are postponed, coal plants stay open, and political leaders promise decarbonization by 2050, yet make no binding commitments today. Climate activists scream headlines, but systemic politics still prioritizes polls over planetary viability. This is not just incompetence, it's moral compression, ethical evaluation squeezed into the shortest possible time lens. Why does this happen? Part of it is cognitive. Humans naturally suffer from myopic loss aversion, a bias where immediate gains or losses loom larger in our minds than long-term outcomes. We avoid short-term pain, even when long-term benefits vastly outweigh the costs. On a personal level, this explains why people snack instead of diet or binge watch instead of study. On the political level, it explains why leaders postpone hard decisions until after elections. It's not just laziness, it's built into how human brains evaluate time. There's a philosophical framework gaining traction that directly opposes this narrow view: long-termism. Long-termism insists that the moral importance of actions doesn't depend on when they happen, that what matters is their lasting impact on human and planetary futures. In this view, preventing catastrophic risks like nuclear war, climate collapse, or uncontrolled AI isn't optional. It's ethically essential because trillions of future lives could be affected. That's not some sci-fi fantasy. It's the moral logic of considering millions or even billions of lives yet unborn as having equal moral weight to those already here. Even outside philosophy, scholars in political science are noticing the same gap. A 2024 political behavior study finds that people's time horizons, whether they value the future more than the present, affects policy preferences dramatically. Parenthood, for instance, shifts many people's moral calculus toward future-oriented issues, probably because holding a child makes the future more concrete and therefore morally relevant. But here's the punchline no one wants to admit. Most of us, not just politicians, are guilty of versions of short-term moral blindness. We complain about climate change, but drive cars that emit carbon. We talk about inequality, but buy products made in sweatshops. We rail against injustice, yet demand quick fixes over deep reform. We care about headlines more than histories. Real ethics require thought stretched across time. It demands that you weigh consequences decades ahead, not just next year's poll numbers or next quarter's profit. That's why ethical frameworks that include future generations, whether long-termism, intergenerational justice, or sustainability ethics, aren't just academic, they are existentially practical. They call out the energy crisis not just because humans exist now, but because future humans will suffer or thrive based on today's choices. They demand investing in education, not just consumption. They require we stop seeing morality as immediate punishment or reward and see it as legacy, responsibility, and stewardship. The real tragedy isn't that politicians are short-sighted, it's that we're all complicit in valuing the ephemeral over the enduring. You might think you're an ethical person, but if your moral compass resets every morning based on the latest gossip, you are living inside a time frame too tiny to sustain meaning. Key idea: ethical and political failure in modern life is not just bad judgment, it is a failure to think across time, to include future consequences and future people in moral reasoning, and to value long-term impact over immediate gratification. Key takeaway: morality isn't a reaction to urgency, it's a commitment to long-term consequences. When you start thinking about what future humans will owe to your choices today, your moral decisions change, and possibly so does the world. Favorite quote: short-term ethics make headlines, long-term ethics build civilizations. What a life produces. People love the idea of achievement, the trophy, the promotion, the headline, but most of them are terrified of what it actually takes. Slow, repetitive, relentless continuity rather than sprint-style bursts of intensity. You live in a culture that glamorizes furious effort, explosion-like 10 times moments, and miraculous success stories. Yet almost no culture in history has understood the architecture of long-term achievement, the quiet, repetitive grind that builds real impact over time. Robert Grudin slices this open. Life isn't a series of dramatic peaks, it's a continuum, like a river shaped by persistent current, not a single thunderous waterfall. The book itself doesn't mince this. It contrasts mechanical, rushed achievement, the piecemeal hustle everyone posts on social media, with organic growth over time, where meaning accumulates not by acceleration, but by persistence. Real accomplishment doesn't live in intensity alone, it lives in consistency, adaptation, and cumulative effort. That is the core idea when you merge achievement with natural and unnatural time in Grudin's text. Psychology backs this up. Research on grit, perseverance, and sustained passion toward long-term goals shows that people who maintain direction and keep working despite setbacks tend to outperform those who blaze fast and burn out fast. Grit, as studied by Angela Duckworth, isn't just about energy, It's about not giving up when the world demands quick results instead of slow refinement. Persistence, not brilliance, predicts a lot of real success. And this isn't just motivational fluff. Studies on achievement goals demonstrate that individuals focused on mastery, improving competence over time, actually sustain effort and intrinsic interest, while short-term performance goals tend to lead to avoidance, stress, and burnout. People chasing recognition lose internal motivation, while those chasing growth build durable capability. Think about your own life. You start a new habit in January with fireworks and willpower, and by March, you've quit. You binge watch productivity videos on YouTube, but skip the hard, repetitive work that truly changes neural pathways and builds capability. You want the aha moment, but avoid the aha that only comes after hundreds of unpleasant, unglamorous reps. Podcasts and leaders you respect underline this same truth. On Purpose with Jay Shetty, recent episodes emphasize that deep transformation isn't about chasing surface motivation. It's about building systems and habits that carry you forward regardless of how you feel, and about aligning identity with long-term values rather than instantaneous emotion. Jay and his guests urge you to embrace deliberate focus, environment design, and patience, ideas psychologists call implementation intentions. Simple if-then plans that glue your intentions to real behavior. They convert intention into sustainable action, and that's where long-term achievement lives. Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO Community echoes the same. In interviews with founders and creatives, the common theme isn't glitzy breakthroughs. It's grinding through quiet seasons of doubt, building traction over years, recalibrating goals, and accumulating progress in ways that don't fit on a motivational quote card. True success stories rarely happen overnight. They happen because someone kept working when no one was watching. Global research into academic and scientific careers further dismantles the myth of early peak achievement. Studies of productivity among 300,000 plus late career scientists show that long-term performance is path dependent. Early habits, consistent effort, and sustained engagement are far stronger predictors of lifetime output than frantic bursts early in life. That means the people who succeed are not just those with early talent, they're the ones who stayed on course for decades. There's also a productive paradox tied to time. Your brain hates long-term effort because evolution didn't design you to wait for results. It rewards immediate dopamine, likes small wins, and punishes delayed satisfaction. That's why productivity gurus today talk about monk mode, deep focus periods where you lock out cheap dopamine and force your mind to adapt because ordinary attention isn't wired for slow growth. And here's the conflict most people never confront. The modern world celebrates visible hustle and ignores invisible persistence. News headlines rave about explosive first-year founders or overnight sensations, while the journalists never cover the decade it took to build real mastery. That creates a cultural illusion, that confusion, that if it didn't happen in 18 months, something's wrong with you, when what's wrong is simply that you're absorbing the wrong model of achievement. You think intensity equals result. You think burst mode wins the marathon. You think the loudest hustle is the most effective. And every year you feel more burned out, empty, and stuck in a loop because you're chasing the flash instead of building the flow. Achievement in human time isn't a sprint, it's a rhythmic climb. It's waking up and doing the work when the world sleeps, not for a viral moment, but to expand the territory of your future self. The people who change their lives spend years shifting their identity, habits, rewards, and attention. They don't chase efficiency hacks, they build endurance. Key idea: lasting achievement is not about intensity, hustle cycles, or flashes of effort. It is about continuity, persistence, and the slow accrual of capability over extended time. Key takeaway: If your idea of success depends on rapid results, you are chasing a cultural illusion. Real accomplishment is rooted in the habitual repetition and sustained engagement that transform your inner capacities over years, not weeks. Adopt systems that reinforce consistency and align with long-term identity, and your life, not just your to-do list, will finally begin to move. Favorite quote: "Achievement doesn't explode into view. It emerges from the persistent shaping of your time, values, and habits across years." Art, memory, and what endures. You ever catch yourself flipping through old photos and suddenly feel a moment you thought was gone forever? Like that flash of heat from a summer 3 years ago, or the echo of a laugh long silent. That's not nostalgia messing with you. That's memory pulling time out of its hiding place and showing you something real. Some moments refuse to die. Meaning doesn't just happen, it sticks. And art, ritual, and memory are the forces that make time matter. Robert Grudin doesn't just argue that memory and art are responses to time, he shows that they are time machines of a kind. In his blending of time and art with memory, the book reveals that art doesn't just represent time, it captures it, brings it back, replays it, and lets it become part of our psychological continuity. Memory isn't passive storage. It's a living, breathing force that shapes who we are and how we relate to every tick of the clock we call a life. Grudin's argument is that art and memory are twin responses to time's inevitability. Time erodes moments, but art and memory fight back. They make moments enduring. Without them, life feels like meaningless seconds you check off one by one. With them, life becomes a narrative, a tapestry, a story you can revisit, reinterpret, and re-inhabit. And this is not just romantic philosophy. Contemporary research supports the idea that memory and art are deeply entangled in how humans construct meaning. Art seems to trigger memory consolidation processes in the brain, helping to encode experiences more deeply than ordinary events. Researchers believe that viewing art, even just for a few moments, can enhance memory consolidation, a process where short-term memories are stabilized into long-term storage, and that this is tied to specific neural mechanisms. That's neuroscience speaking, not metaphor. Across cultures, art has always been humanity's way of freezing the flow, from ancient cave paintings to modern digital exhibitions. There's a virtual global exhibition called Time and Memory that brings together artists from every corner of the world. These artists don't just paint or sculpt, they force moments into lasting form, refusing to let time steamroll experience into emptiness. Memory and art aren't limited to galleries. There are movies like The Eternal Memory, a documentary about love, identity, and Alzheimer's disease, where the struggle to preserve identity transforms into a meditation on what memories matter and how relationships etch time into the human psyche. There's also My Memory Walls, a Canadian short documentary where an elderly artist literally paints her life story onto the walls of her home, turning her daily life into a museum of personal memory, a living archive. And in Peru, The Memory of Butterflies uses film to uncover lost personal and collective histories erased by exploitation and time, showing how memory and art reclaim what power tried to bury. Even UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, is pushing initiatives to preserve collective memories digitally, not just as records in climate-controlled vaults, but as lived narratives communities can contribute to and shape. They're reconstructing histories through community engagement and digital archives because memory isn't static, it's ongoing social action. If you ever felt like memory is something fixed, like data on a hard drive, consider this: memory is reconstructive. Neuroscience shows that every time you recall a moment, you reinvent it, weaving emotion, context, and current self-understanding back into it. Your memory of yesterday is already a new creation with every recall. That's why art is so powerful. It anchors memory in sensory experience, sight, sound, context, and triggers networks in your brain that ordinary moments never get close to. And here's the deeper, uncomfortable implication. We live in an age of information overload, and that threatens memory itself. As data floods our lives, the true art of memory, choosing what to retain, what to cherish, what to interpret, becomes critical. There's even research into collective memory structures on the internet, where social media posts and online mourning practices are turned into digital memorials that act as collective memory artifacts. These digital monuments help preserve personal and cultural legacies in ways our ancestors never imagined. This isn't just aesthetic indulgence, it's psychological survival. Humans aren't just biological organisms ticking through time. We are narrative creatures. We define ourselves by the stories we tell about our past, the images and rituals we choose to reinforce those stories, and the art we create to memorialize what matters. Without those, life is just a blur. Key idea: memory and art are not luxuries. They are the mechanisms by which humans resist time's erasure and forge meaning that persists beyond isolated moments. Key takeaway: if you want your life to mean something beyond the sum of chaotic seconds, you must participate in memory creation through art, ritual, storytelling, or intentional reflection, rather than letting time wash everything away without record. Favorite quote: memory doesn't archive your life, it sculpts it. Art gives that sculpture shape. The music of a human life. There's a difference between surviving time and moving with it like a musician with a score. Some people mark time with birthdays, deadlines, calendars, and post-its. Others feel time, its tempo, its rhythm, its rises and falls, almost like music under the sentences of their lives. That difference between merely existing and truly living in a dynamic cadence of experience is at the heart of what Grudin finalizes in his woven reflections on time. Life isn't a straight line of deadlines and goals. It's a composition built out of tempo, recurrence, silence, and resolution. Most people live like they're holding a stopwatch in one hand and a grocery list in the other, thinking that time is something to beat or conquer. But the real trap here, one Grudin makes painfully clear, is that you become your own life's worst conductor, forcing tempo when you should slow down, accelerating when you should pause, and clamoring for noise when you need silence. Life's music isn't clock time, it's patterned experience, and when you divorce yourself from that rhythm, you end up in a kind of psychological cacophony, anxious, rushed, unanchored. There's actual science that mirrors this insight. Research in positive psychology shows that people who derive meaning from life are those who can weave coherence out of their past, present, and future, not by consecutive ticking of moments, but through narrative rhythm, stories that link experience across phases of life. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's backed by studies showing that individuals who construct narrative identity, seeing their life as a coherent story, score higher on well-being, resilience, and purpose measures. Life feels musical only when you can sense the theme and variations over time. In lived experience, this shows up everywhere. On Purpose with Jay Shetty recently tackled the burden of the social clock, that unspoken cadence society tries to impose. Get a degree by 22, settle down by 30, peak by 40, like everyone must march to the same tempo. But life doesn't honor those presets. When listeners are told they're not late and that their timeline is right on time, it's not sugarcoating. It's reminding people to trust the rhythm of their own unfolding, not some external metronome. Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO podcast, Brim, with narratives of people who looked back at their life's movement and realized consistency, context, and patience mattered much more than frantic acceleration. Even criticisms of Bartlett's style, like omitting deeper evidence when heavy topics arise, inadvertently underscore this chapter's point. Meaning isn't found in isolated moments or viral clips. It's found in reflective continuity across experience. Consider documentaries like Life in a Day, a global mosaic where thousands of people's single-day experiences are stitched into something universal, rhythmic, human. One moment of laughter in Kenya is mirrored by sunrise coffee in Tokyo, school lessons in Argentina, afternoon tea in London. It's a montage that makes time feel like music, not just a chronology. That global narrative, collected from millions of seconds, is a symphony of human rhythms, reminders that life's meaning unfolds in patterns, not deadlines. Even podcasts like Meditative Story prove this. First-person stories, scored with music, pairing narrative rhythm with emotional cadence. These episodes show how people's lives, no matter how different, have arcs, climaxes, rests, and resolutions. When listeners hear them, the blend of sound and story evokes felt time, an inner experience that's rich and layered, not mechanical and thin. Grudin's final insight, and the part that challenges most people, is this. Freedom doesn't come from escaping time, it comes from learning to dance with it. You can't outrun the clock or hack your calendar into immortality. You can't binge read meaning or binge scroll until life feels full. True freedom comes from inhabiting your own temporal score, feeling its rhythms, understanding its pauses, and embracing the narrative arcs you create through the choices you make. Imagine your life like a musical composition. There are themes, your values, your loves, your losses. There are variations, personal growth, career shifts, identity changes. There are rests, silence, pauses, times of reflection that seem empty but are rich in structure. There are resolutions, moments where coherence is felt, not just thought. This is why deep meaning doesn't happen in isolated achievements or fleeting pleasures. It happens in sustained engagement with your own lived narrative, in embracing themes that resonate across time, in allowing silence to have its own voice, and in trusting that your tempo, slow, fast, or somewhere unmarked, is your tempo. That's what makes your life music, and not just motion. Key idea: life's deepest meaning is not found in escaped time or fractured moments, but in sensing, feeling, and engaging with the rhythm of experience, a cadence that arises from the interplay of past, present, and future lived fully and coherently. Key takeaway: freedom from the tyranny of fragmented time comes not from disconnection, but from harmonizing your inner sense of time with the lived reality of your narrative, a personal composition with its own tempo, pauses, and resolutions. Favorite quote: life isn't a series of seconds on a stopwatch. It's a composition we learn to feel, shape, and enter into with meaning. Conclusion: let's get real for a second. You didn't click on this summary just to collect facts. You clicked because somewhere inside you feel like life is slipping through your fingers. And now that you've followed the journey, from hidden time structures to broken now illusions, from fragmented identity to moral myopia, from shallow achievement to deep artistic memory, all the way to the rhythm of a human life, you're probably asking one question: what the hell does it all mean for your life? Here's the brutal truth nobody in motivational land wants to tell you. Life is not about escaping time. It's not about beating the clock. It's not about cramming every second with noise, productivity, and hype. You don't get a life hack that suddenly solves this. You don't get a shortcut. You get one thing and only one thing that actually matters: a lived relationship with your own time. Everything we unpacked comes back to this: that your experience of time, how you interpret it, navigate it, and inhabit it, is the real arena of the human struggle. Most people don't just misunderstand time, they submit to it. They let fragmented pasts, panicked presents, and unrealized futures run their lives. They sprint, they scroll, they distract, and in the end they wake up far older than they felt. But you're waking up. You're starting to see that time isn't a machine to beat, it's a reality you live inside. The present isn't just the now on a clock, it's a window between your past and your future selves. Your identity isn't something you find, it's something you grow across years like a tree, not like a rocket. True morality isn't about winning today's headlines, it's about what your choices mean decades from now. Real achievement isn't explosive, it's slow, steady, and cumulative, like water carving stone. Art and memory don't preserve only moments, they shape meaning that defies time's eroding force. A life lived well doesn't have rhythm by accident, it has harmony between your inner tempo and your external actions. That's the music Grudin is talking about. Most people hear time and think of clocks, schedules, deadlines, but time feels, time shapes experience, time bends identity, and time defines meaning. And once you start living in time instead of fighting it, everything changes. Your failures start to become feedback. Your past doesn't weigh you down, it informs you. Your future isn't a threat, it guides you. Your present isn't shallow, it's the field where life actually happens. Here's the climax most people never reach. Life isn't something you escape from. Life is something you compose. You get to decide the tempo. You get to choose the themes. You get to embrace the silences. You get to weave the recurring patterns that become your legacy. So let this be the moment you stop running from time and start living inside it, with awareness, with depth, with purpose. If this summary hit you, if this shift in how you think about time, identity, achievement, and meaning feels like a crack in the illusion, then do yourself one more favor. Buy the book, read it, own it. Let Robert Grudin's full words sit with you, push you, challenge you, and expand you in ways this summary only begins to open. Because the real learning, the uncomfortable, life-altering kind, doesn't happen in cliff notes. It happens in the slow engagement with the idea that time isn't stealing your life, unless you let it. And now you know, your life isn't a countdown, it's a composition. Play it with intention, feel the rhythm, let your time become your art. Because once you do that, you don't just survive time, you master it.